a war in the Middle East is sending shockwaves across the entire globe. We are now on day 12 of the US-Israel conflict with Iran, and the consequences? Well, they're already hitting everything from the price you pay for gas to the stability of entire regions. So today, we're going to go beyond the headlines to really understand the true global impact of this crisis.
But before we get into the geopolitics, we need to start right here with the human cost. This message from a young person inside Iran just cuts through all the noise. It's a really stark reminder of the reality on the ground. And honestly, it's where we have to begin.
So how are we going to break this all down? First, we'll start at the epicenter of the fighting itself. Then, we'll trace those shockwaves as they ripple outward through the global economy, right across the region, and even into the halls of power, where some nations see a real opportunity in all this chaos. And finally, we'll tackle the biggest question of all. What is the end game here? Okay, so first up, let's get a really clear picture of the military situation as it stands right now, nearly 2 weeks into this whole thing.
12 days. You know, it might not seem like a super long time, but it's been more than enough for naval clashes, airstrikes, and retaliatory attacks to set the stage for a much wider and, frankly, more dangerous conflict. So on the military front, we're seeing a pretty clear pattern emerge. The U.S. seems to be focused on the sea, reporting that they've taken out Iranian mineling ships to try and secure those vital shipping lanes. At the same time, you've got joint U.S.-Israeli air power hitting targets inside Iran, while Iran is striking back where it can hurt the world most by attacking commercial ships in the Gulf. And, of course, these military actions have a devastating human cost. Iranian state media is reporting that over 70 people have been killed inside the country since the war began.
And this brings us right back to the stories behind the numbers. For young people in Iran, this isn't some distant geopolitical chess match. No, it's the sudden, violent loss of friends, and it's the terrifying new reality of their daily lives.
Now let's trace that first major global ripple effect, the economic shockwave. Because make no mistake, while this is a regional war, it is causing a worldwide economic crisis. And that whole crisis centers on this one single narrow channel of water, the Strait of Hormuz. It's like the jugular vein of the global oil supply. If you can control it, or even just threaten it, you can basically hold the world's economy hostage. And the scale of that vulnerability is just staggering. A full 1/5, 20% of the entire world's daily oil supply passes through this one choke point. So disruption here isn't just a local problem. It's an instant global energy crisis for everybody. And Iran is absolutely exploiting this. By striking commercial vessels and warning all the others to stay away, they are trying to shut down what one U.S. general called a vital economic lifeline. And they're having some success. The international response has been pretty historic. 32 nations have agreed to release 400 million barrels of oil from their strategic reserves. It's the largest release like this in history, and it's a move designed not really to solve the supply problem, but to send a powerful signal to the markets and try to calm those skyrocketing prices. But this conflict isn't just hitting global markets. It's also boiling over into neighboring countries, and that is dramatically escalating regional tensions. In Lebanon, for instance, the war has basically ignited a second front. Israel is carrying out extensive strikes on what it claims are Hezbollah targets, and the death toll there is already approaching 600. And the conflict hit the capital in a shocking new way when an apartment building in a residential part of Beirut was hit, leaving citizens with this terrifying feeling that absolutely nowhere is safe. The threat is also spreading to the Gulf states. Over in the UAE, Iranian-made drones were intercepted near Dubai's international airport, bringing the conflict right to the doorstep of one of the world's most important travel and financial hubs. And look, this isn't an isolated incident. It's a clear pattern of escalation. For the second time in just 5 days, drones have threatened the world's busiest airport for international travel. This seems to be a very deliberate strategy by Iran to show its reach and its ability to disrupt critical global systems. So this next ripple effect takes us into the world of global power politics, where for some nations, this crisis isn't just a problem to be managed, it's an opportunity to be seized. And this slide really reveals how two nations already locked in their own war are playing the strategic long game. For Russia, higher oil prices mean more money for its war in Ukraine, while offering to mediate this conflict boosts its global influence. For Ukraine, this is a chance to sell its world-leading interceptor drones, build new alliances in the Gulf, and, importantly, reframe itself as a capable ally, not just a victim. So all of these things, the military strikes, the economic fallout, the regional escalation, they all bring us to the single most important question about this war. How does it end? And to even begin to answer that, we have to understand Iran's fundamental strategy, which is all rooted in this concept: asymmetric warfare. In simple terms, it's how a militarily weaker power can fight and maybe even win against a superpower. It's the David versus Goliath playbook.
Look, Iran's leadership knows it cannot win a direct head-to-head conventional war with the US and Israel. So they don't fight one. Instead, they fight asymmetrically. They spread the conflict, they hit unexpected targets like airports and commercial ships, and they use every tool they have to inflict pain and disrupt the global order.
And maybe the greatest obstacle to finding an exit here is that the main players aren't even working towards the same finish line. The US seems to be looking for a resolution within weeks or months. Israel is pushing for a much more aggressive outcome, regime change. And Iran's goal? It's totally different: survival. They believe they can just outlast their adversaries. And that right there is the key to understanding Iran's strategy. If, after all of this, the current regime is still in power, they will frame that as a monumental victory. They will be able to say they stood up to the United States and Israel and survived. Which leaves us with this one final critical question. In a war of survival versus a war for objectives, who has the most time? As this conflict keeps unfolding, the answer to that question may very well determine the entire outcome.